Now, as a designer, one of the things that interests me is intelligence and statistics. Uh, and intelligence, in my definition, is the efficiency with which time, money, and natural resources are transformed into human well being. In other words, if you have two human beings and one human being is taking $1 and a tree and an hour and turning that into an abundance of human well-being, and another person is taking $1, a tree, and an hour and creating endless amounts of suffering for a great number of people, for example, starting a forest fire, burning up the dollar, terrorizing, then the one person is clearly more intelligent than the other. And the thing that interests me is that in a culture that worships capital, a capitalist culture, there's generally a fair amount of intelligent stuff being done with money. At least if money can be made, there's someone really interested in that angle. And if you tell someone, here, you can turn $1 into $10, they're very excited. You can be incredibly high prestige in our cult, etc., if you do that. And so you've got guaranteed employment, high social ranking, lots of investment, etc. If you can turn $1 into $10 consistently, 1,000% return on investment. Now, what I find fascinating as a designer is that for me, the biggest pain in my life has been what? Personal relationships, parental abuse, therapeutic abuse, girlfriend, boyfriend abuse. People have caused me more pain than any other thing. Nature has not caused me anything like the amount of pain that people have caused me. And so people have caused pain. Now, on the flip side, and at their best, successful, well-designed, I would call them 10x relationships because they're at least 10 times above average in what is considered average in our culture, that people have created the most exquisite and beautiful moments of my life. So people have caused me more pain than any other thing in this world, and people have caused me more joy, more beauty, more delight, more, etc., than anything else in this world. Now, that makes people really important to the intelligent equation. If intelligence is the efficiency with which energy is transformed into human well-being, and people both generate, the worst points in well-being and the best points in well-being, then people are significant, one. Secondly, when you understand, as I came to learn, that it wasn't people, it was the protocol or design through which people engaged. So you could say it was the culture, you could say it was the design, you could say it was the protocol, you could say it was the pattern. That basically you have people with the highest potential to cause suffering or cause joy, one. That certain protocols, certain ways of engaging caused enormous amounts of suffering, and certain ways of engaging created enormous amounts of joy and sustainable well-being. And so this leads to an obvious conclusion that the most intelligent thing that we can do as people is to learn how, as people, we can co-create tremendous amount of value, joy, and well-being together as people. and simultaneously study how to avoid creating the peaks and worst amounts of suffering. And so this is rational. Now, people study how to turn $1 into $10 all the time, but having $1 turn into $10 has never created the amount of joy and sustainable well-being in my life than the way a really terrific relationship has. 1. 2, having $10 become $1, losing 90% of has never created the amount of pain and suffering, the way that a human being, abusing, shaming, violating, etc., has created. And so, so the first illusion is, or awareness, or kind of penetrating the illusion is, my cult is crazy. I have a cult that I live in that obsesses about turning $1 into $10, and will give you just about anything you want in this world if you will do that for it, and that completely ignores the science of human relationships. Now, one of the most fascinating things that I discovered in human relationships was that couples knew absolutely nothing about each other a lot of the time. And another way of saying that is they knew nothing about the most important things. So if we understand that it's all about the design, meaning it's not about people, it's about the way that people interact, meaning a human being, like a hammer or like a nail or like a rifle or like a piece of bread, is neutral. If you stuff a whole loaf of bread down someone's throat without letting them chew it, they'll choke to death and they'll die. It's a neutral object. If you bash someone over the head with a hammer, they'll die. If you pound in 2,000 nails with a hammer and build someone a house, you may preserve their life. If you feed someone bread, in other words, it's not the object. It's not people that matters. It is the way that people know how to engage. And, in casual couple observation, as a curious young person and moving into young adulthood, etc., and studying relationships, I would go up to couples and I'd say, what do you love the most about your partner, and what do you love the most about your partner? I would ask, what would make you feel totally loved? And what could you do to make your partner feel totally loved? Now, these are the most basic questions. This would be like, if you wanted to be in the automotive business, and they said, okay, well, do you know about welding? No. Do you know about painting a car? No. Do you know what an engine is? No. Do you know what gasoline is? No. But you're in the car industry. Yeah, I'm in the car industry. Doing what exactly? Making cars. Well, how are you going to make good cars if you don't understand combustion? You don't know how to paint a car. You don't know how to weld a car. Do you know mining? Not really. But you're in the car business? I mean, this is a joke, and we would not tolerate it because we're highly efficient as a culture around things and money. But I've asked women that I've dated, what would make you feel totally and completely loved? And they have told me, some of these women are 50 and 60 years old. I don't date by age, I date by interconnection and stuff. And so some of these women, 50, 60 years old, and they say two startling things. I don't know. You don't know what will make you feel deeply and fully loved? This is astounding. And 2, no one has ever asked me that question in my entire life. And so we have a landscape of phenomenal ignorance about the most important things that correlate to human intelligence, the efficiency of turning energy time, money, and natural resources, of which human engagement is a key element, into human well-being. We have a desert of knowledge in that terrain. And what I found just as interesting is there is not a single human being in my entire life who has ever asked me any of the most important questions. Any of the most important questions. I mean, just think about how stunning that is. It would literally be like, General Motors. You say, do you know what welding is? No, I don't. No one has ever asked us that question before. You mean there's a technology for combining metal that makes cars, 10 times stronger and cheaper? Yes, there is. There absolutely is. Well, nobody ever asked us about it, and we know nothing about it. It's that big of a deal. And so I grew tired and impatient with the complacency of ignorance in human relationships, understanding that it was that complacency and ignorance that made the difference, where most relationships and interactions with human beings were mediocre at best, meaning they didn't particularly hurt you and they brought little or no value. And so, they're mediocre. They're wasted opportunities. I decided to, make a little dent in that by writing this book called Intimacy. And so having realized that no one had ever asked me any of the most important questions, such as, if we need to end this relationship, how can I end it in a way that isn't traumatizing for you, that feels healing and loving? That's a good question. No one's ever asked me that in my entire life. 2, what would make you feel deeply and fully loved? Great question. No one's ever asked me that in my entire life, including my parents. 3, what's pissing me off, hurting you, causing pain, unnecessary suffering that I'm doing, and how could I change it? No one's ever asked me that in my entire life. 4, here's how you could totally love me. No one's told me that, in my entire life. So just a few very, very basic things to cover. And then what about value hierarchy? For example, if there's this cute, sexy something, we all value pleasure and sexuality, and we all value feeling special and significant. So there's this cute, sexy something. Do you want to value monogamy and, this, that, and the other over sexual variety, or do you want to value sexual variety over monogamy, blah, blah, blah? It's like, let's look at the value hierarchy in different situations and see where we come together and where we diverge. No one's ever asked me that before. And so this book, Intimacy, Co-Creating a High-Value Relationship with Me, I wrote entirely for a lover or perhaps a best friend. So this entire book is for one person, at least one person at a time in my case. And I put into this book everything that no one ever asked me, and a lot more. What's my horoscope? What's my Enneagram sign? What are my food allergies? How to really give me a beautiful gift? How to end a relationship? What friendship looks like? What are my worldviews and beliefs? What makes me feel completely and totally loved? I talked about the landscape of past experiences, horrible experiences I've had with past partners, wonderful experiences I've had. What was the difference, and what am I trying to create in the future? And just as importantly, at each point in the book, I'm asking the person reading to respond, to be as visible with me as I am with them. And partly what this book is simply making a statement that there is a ton of stuff about you and a ton of stuff about me that does not have space in our cult. 1. 2, that's the most important stuff. That the most technologically relevant stuff to creating high-value relationships has no space in our cult. And 3, that unless we make space for it, the odds of having a transcendent 10x relationship are close to 0. But that if we will do our work, the odds of having a 10x relationship go up to about 70% or more. And this is phenomenal. 70% or more? From close to 0 to 70% or more, meaning that, for me, I'd say about 85% of the partners who have had an interest in a 10x relationship, an interest in material like this, and will dance in this terrain, tell me things like, this is the best relationship I've ever had in my entire life. Parent, childhood, whatever. And I've grown more and I've learned more and this is wonderful, blah, 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 blah. I've never felt so loved, etc. And I feel the same way. And so, that is a stunning accomplishment to go from close to 0 to phenomenal relationship. And it's all about honoring the possibility field. The possibility field for horror and suffering, the possibility field for exquisite beauty with another human being.